What's up, everybody? I'm TJ.
And I'm Kelsey, and we are
the Nashville Wine Duo.
Okay. All right, we are here with Rob at Etch. He is a sommelier. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Yes.
Wonderful having me.
Thanks for having us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yes. So, first off, I just wanted you to explain to us what we're sipping on first.
Oh, I guess we're starting off with that. So this is Verdicchio, a fantastic little grape from the east coast of Italy, about halfway down in the area called Guiamaraes. One of the more characterful Italian whites in my mind. Pinot Grigio gets the familiarity, I guess, with a lot of people as far as what they think of Italian whites.
Yeah.
But texture-wise, I always think of it as great for people who want maybe sort of like an unoaked style of Chardonnay. There's some texture there. The acidity is a bit more lifted here now that Chardonnay can't have that.
Right.
And there's this really pretty almondy note that finishes on the end, which is cool because I think in people's palates it can mimic an oak flavor profile enough that I think, again, it still fits a great nook, a niche for people that want to be adventurous but that like a little bit more fuller bodied kind of style of wine.
So as you're talking, I'm just thinking like when people go in to order, Italian wine, they often think red, they don't always think white.
Yeah,
And if they
absolutely.
do think white, they think Pinot Grigio. So
Exactly.
if someone were to come to Etch and they wanted to order Pinot Grigio, would you be like, hey, maybe try this? Like, would you kind of push them in a different direction?
Depends. So Pinot Grigio, stylistically, is probably similar to a couple of other grapes, more so than it would be to this. I might try to veer them into Albarino to kind of stay in that, depending on whether or not I feel like they're ready to get pushed far enough out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because that's always kind of a gauge when you have guests in there. You want to see if they want comfort or if they want adventure, and then slowly try to pull them along in that direction. But this is, I think it wouldn't be too far out that it could be exciting for someone that has something in mind Italian. Maybe they visited Italy, maybe they have familial ties to it somewhere and want something that is a bit more indigenous to it. Not that Pinot Grigio isn't,
Right.
but that has a bit more.
The name is so interesting. I can't even know if I can even pronounce it.
Yeah, well, I kind of put the little accent on there, but Verdicchio.
Verdicchio.
Yeah, see?
Okay.
Much kind of easy.
Yeah, it is easy to
in that
say.
area.
Awesome.
But just one of my favorite Italian whites to kind of sip on. It's incredibly versatile with a ton of food. It has just great acidity, great texture, and then that little almondy, nutty kind of note at the end.
Well, I'm
It's
excited.
just a
Let's
fun
give it a
little
try.
sipper.
I totally get the almond you were talking about.
Very nice.
I really love this. This is great.
And it just lingers a little bit longer. Pinot Grigio is much, I think, cleaner, leaner, easier to kind of move through, which is great with maybe different types of food, but this can, I think, rock with even heavier style
Totally.
dishes. But
Yeah, it really
just a
like
fun little quirk.
lingers in your mouth.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, I don't know, it's very complex for a white. I really enjoy this, and I can see what you're saying about it going well with like any kind of food.
It's very smooth up front. And
Yeah.
then,
Punches you a little
yeah,
bit.
and then it really kicks in.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the texture kind of leaves up front and then it feels
Yeah.
voluptuous. But as it finishes, it kind of still tingles on its way over, which kind of helps lengthen the flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
This
why
is
sort of
really
acidity
nice.
is, not just in wine, but in food, is so important because it just helps sort of everything intermingle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you serve this by the glass and by the bottle?
Indeed.
Okay.
Everything as well. So it's
They immediately put a smile on my face. Like, as soon as I sipped it, I'm like, oh, this is so good.
It's great.
Awesome.
just to
like
kind of
that.
plug in quirky. Not that we don't have styles of wine that are going to be a bit more familiar for people who want that comfort, but if you don't have a couple of goodies to kind of really excite someone, especially at a place like here, I think, to kind of mimic the style of food that we do, and certainly the pedigree and reputation that Etch has built, thanks to our executive chef, Deb Paquette. If there isn't a bit of adventure in the beverages as well as the food, I feel that it's kind of lost a little bit of the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you come across this wine?
This particular bottling is brought in by an import company, Vineyard Brands, that a good friend of mine works for. So I was already fond of this particular grape after going down the rabbit hole of Italy specifically, which is you can potentially never get out of if you go down that far down. but it was just stylistically a wine that I kind of really enjoyed for all the reasons that we've talked about. And then she tasted me on this particular one, and not only was it delicious, but it was a nice little way to kind of give a little bit of love to a friend of mine that's been in Nashville for a while. So it's a little win-win.
100%. Man, this is so good. Funny side note too, we took our mask down, obviously we were going to start drinking, and I saw he had a mustache, and I was like, I love his mustache. You don't know what people look like anymore. It's so kind of crazy.
It's funny how you can think of, based on from here on up, your mind naturally tries to build what the missing pieces are, and then the surprise ends up being kind of
Well, and I said this the other day to somebody, and I don't mean to be mean to anybody, but I feel like all people look younger when they take it down. All people. I don't know why. I do. I feel like, I'm like, oh my gosh, your face. It's yeah. Like I thought that at TJ too. So funny, but anyway, just went on that side note. But let's move on to the next one. But first, I wanted you to. So you're kind of telling us a little bit about this wine before we got into it. It's a Portuguese wine.
Yes.
And you said that you are Portuguese.
Yeah, my last name is Portuguese.
Yeah.
I guess more Peruvian than Portuguese.
Okay.
French and German as well. But my last name is Portuguese. Guiamaraes is a little town northeast of Porto, in the Douro region, actually, which is where we are here with the wine. Full-on medieval castle there, like I was telling you before.
Yeah.
I had original plans of going there and claiming my heirdom, but it's a much more common name there than it is in the United States. So
it still sounds
cool. It sounds Guiamaraes. That kind of worked pretty well. But what I never mind the personal sort of connection with Portugal in that respect. I've always loved Portuguese. I mean, it's only been since the 50s that producers. These are essentially the grapes that have been made into port for centuries.
These are the grapes that have been made into port?
Yeah, Touriga Nacional, the primary grape, Touriga Franca, Touriga Tinta Roriz. These are all the grapes that have been used in port production, at least in red port. But it wasn't since the 50s that some producers started trying to make dry red wines with them. And they ended up being absolutely phenomenal. Actually, this bottling by Prats and Samhita, Postscriptum, they have a bigger brother. It's Postscriptum de Crucea. Their Crucea bottling, which is sort of their 700 series, whatever. The top tier of their pyramid was the number 3 Wine Spectator Wine of the Year in 2014.
Oh, wow.
For the 2011 vintage. And certainly, I think the quality of the grapes is now, I think, supported by the Bordelais as well, because actually Touriga Nacional has just been approved as a new permissible Bordeaux grape in the last couple of years. Well, global warming kind of changing how grapes are going to grow.
Yeah, we've heard
but
that.
it's a wine that has naturally high tannin. As you were talking about the color when we were pouring it, when we were off camera, some good concentration as well, and a beautiful perfume, a natural sort of violet-y aromatic that is really distinctive. Well, I love the fact that it can play in the realm of somebody who likes Cabernet drinkers, Cabernet wines, whether or not for California or Bordeaux or from Washington State or South America even. But it's a fun, bolder style wine that, again, talking about the adventure nook that we try to have enough offerings of, also by the glass as well and by the bottle. So just an example of the fact that I hope that there are selections that can be adventurous.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think wine, that's kind of like all about wine. That's awesome. I love how like wine is like everywhere. It's all over the world, and like there's so many like avenues to it, and like it's never ending of like what you can know about it. And that's I was gonna ask you though, like so it's the average person that like would look at this bottle. So like, you know, what would you describe it like to a person that doesn't know anything about wine? Like what would be like a very simple way to be like, this is what this is?
Think of maybe the of Cabernet, the floral notes of Merlot, and maybe a bit of the texture and fruit profile also of Malbec, I think. So again, these are all Bordeaux grapes, but that floral note is pretty distinctive there. And in certain styles, Merlot can have a really pretty perfume as well. I find it a lot in Washington wines as well. So I think that is something that people can familiarize or have awareness of or experience with, that they can kind of see what this jigsaw puzzle of flavor might end up coming across to them. But it's incredibly just a fun option if you're...
It just smells
It's got a great smell.
It's really, I mean, would you say it's got cocoa in it? Like, kind of that? I think of that. Oh, yeah.
but firm enough again to handle the same thoughts that you would have of pairing the classic, Cabernet with steak or things like that.
What do you love about it?
Well, I love a good cab and I like a good Malbec.
Yeah.
It's kind
And
of
this-
what you were
yeah.
saying. It's kind
Yeah.
of like this trio of just like
Of,
Yeah, you get the vibes from all three.
you really
For
do.
sure. Cab, Merlot,
The
Malbec.
smell, yeah.
Malbec gives you a little bit more texture, and the fruit can sometimes be a little bit more blue, blackberry, black raspberry kind of thing, which the flavor profile here stays generally in. But then that floral thing is pretty distinctive with the grape. And then the tannins and I think the umph of
I
Yeah.
Cabernet as well.
I love the tannins in this too.
Yeah, instead of GSM, you can make the GMM. It's a line. I really enjoy this.
And I love that you guys serve it by the glass and the bottle, like you were saying, because it could really get someone to try it, number one, and then, if they're really enjoying it, get a bottle.
It's got some nice acidity at the end too.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of like tannin going on, which it's more just very smooth to me. And then with the acidity at the end, right? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, it isn't actually a tannic
Yeah.
grape, but
it doesn't, like,
there's
punch
people
you in the face.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
on top of your bong, that's something that they intend to certainly age for much longer is going to probably be built in the waypoint there, definitely.
Yeah.
And more tannic, but this is sort of kind of out of the gate, ready.
Yeah, awesome.
I think it's so cool that you get to introduce people to wine.
Yeah.
By just sitting there and talking to them and getting to hear kind of what they're into, you can kind of steer them, like you were saying earlier, like, hey, I've got something for you to try.
Well, I mean, it's kind of fun. Usually I kind of tease them after the fact that if they do discover something that they wouldn't normally think, whether or not it's a particular grape or an area of the world that they hadn't been in before, and they end up enjoying it, and they'll take a picture of the label, and they get to go home, and when they get together with their group of friends, they're swanky, oh, have you even heard of this world, this other part of the world? Well, let me show you what it's all about. So then they tend to be the cool person.
Well, I might feel cool after this. I might be like, oh, I went to Etch, now I talk to Sommelier. So how often are you here?
I mean, it's the life of hospitality.
Okay.
We were fortunately closed, well, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on whether or not you want to come to visit us on Sundays. We're closed on Sundays. But, and then there's one other day in there randomly that gets free. But for the most part, maybe about 10, 11, 12 hours a day. We're open for lunch and dinner, so it's the entire day. Both shifts or both lunch and dinner have different menus, so there's all sorts of other fun things to kind of experience. But here, a good bit, and for the reasons that you were talking about, as far as being able to introduce people into new wines, that's sort of what makes it feel less like work to have a
Right.
chance to
This
kind
is
of
what
do
you
that.
love.
I mean,
Yeah, totally.
And certainly while I'm, except for situations like this notwithstanding, obviously I'm not going to be drinking a lot while I'm working.
Yes,
so
yeah.
the next best thing is just to live vicariously through the guests'
Right.
taste buds.
Yeah, I love that. So are you like you're walking around out there like pretty often?
Yeah.
Everybody can just.
Yeah, I mean, all of the management over here, we end up having multiple roles. We'll kind of cover all the bases that we need to, whether or not it's kind of expediting food out of the kitchen or just interacting with guests or helping with staff. I think it's the sort of the management way that you would want it to be, where we're in sort of the trenches, I guess, with the infantry, with the staff as they're kind of helping out there and doing what needs to be done, especially in this last year where things have been all up in the air, and we're sort of learning how many people are transitioning and getting back out to dining, how to deal with expectations of how many people we should expect, and then staffing, but that's all kind of the red tape of managing all of that. But it's been sort of tough for everybody, surely, but it's made a lot better when you've got a good team of people that are ready to be where they need to be to kind of make sure the ship runs smoothly.
So do you, are you the main person that's in charge of like the wine education when it comes to like the staff and everything?
Yep.
Okay, so what does that like look like?
Well, lately, I've actually used a online quiz or website, really called Kia, Q-U-I-A, and formulated. This is again getting a little bit nerdy because I enjoy that. Created I think about 210, 220 random questions that I can input into there, and then it will randomly pull from those and create a little quiz. So I've been poking at the staff, giving them little links via email that they go and sort of take this short little quiz, and then we keep track of their scores and see how they do over the course of about a month. And then sort of give out prizes if they end up doing it. But the nifty thing is that once you take the entire quiz and you click submit, there's feedback for every question that you've put in there. So they're learning things as they kind of go, and the competitive nature, some of them will kind of come out if they grumble a little bit. I knew that I just hit the wrong button or something like that nature. And when they do get something wrong, you usually don't, like anytime you take a kind of quiz like that, even if it's something silly for trivia purposes, when you get something wrong, you don't forget it because you're like,
I want to get it
right. So it helps. It's just a fun way to sort of get information.
I like that. I asked that question just because we were talking to somebody recently too about when they visited like a winery or other restaurants too, and how they were disappointed that in a tasting, the person on staff couldn't really clearly communicate what they were drinking at all. And that's disappointing for like the people that are like all about the wine and like wanting the customers to know what they're drinking. And so I was like, okay, it's good to hear like that y'all are really taking a lot of pride in that and like teaching your staff about the wines and wanting, that the customers can come in and not just have to like, where's Rob? Like they know they're going to be able to like talk to the staff and they're going to be educated enough to know like, hey, this is what I know, what is good, so I like that.
Or even just giving the staff the right perspective as well, because sometimes a whole mountain of information and notes on soil composition and vintage variation is going to be less important than, because the guests that are coming in are going to be in a different bracket of education themselves as well.
Very true.
Sometimes the best thing that a staff member could say, especially if they've tasted some of the wines we have, or they won because we sent them home with for having won the best score over the course of the year, and they end up loving it at home. They don't have to know a single thing about the wine, but if a guest comes in and they ask about that wine, and they can just say, you know what, I may not be able to tell you much about the technical details over there, but me and a couple of friends had that bottle last night, and man, it just went down like water. We kind of maybe had a few too many of it. We're still recovering, but it was freaking delicious, and that's
all that matters.
They're speaking from experience.
Right.
That's all that matters.
Well, and we can testify to that. I mean, a lot of people that we talk to about wine, and through this whole last year, this whole journey of wine, we've met people from all walks of life, and that's why we say anybody can be a part of the conversation. Like people that like are at a high caliber sommelier, know everything, or people that know nothing, and if they just want to know if it's good and they love it, that's really what matters.
One thing is if it's delicious.
But it's nice to know that here you have the option of like, if you can come in here as an educated person, or if like with wine, I mean. But anybody can come in here. I'll cut that part out.
We're going to quiz up at the front door, actually. We're going to make sure that you pass 75% of
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but it's nice to know that people can come in here from all walks of life. People that know a lot about wine, or people that don't know anything, and they're going to get a great experience, and they're going to get some really good wine.
Yeah, we're all about showing and showcasing good wine.
Yes.
And the places in Nashville that you can find good wine.
Drink what you like and like what you drink, and
don't
let anybody judge you for it. So, and I just want to ask you a few more cool questions, and then we'll be done. But I just want to hear about, just you. Like, so how did you get to be a sommelier, and how did you come to Etch? And
I've been in hospitality for the entirety of my life. It started as a summer job at a casual dining restaurant, like in the late '90s, and maybe I benefited, or retroactively, I guess, benefited from being a bit of a procrastinator in terms of trying to figure out a career. I just stayed in serving and bartending for so long. It was convenient. I moved around a decent bit, so with the larger chain companies that I moved with, or that I worked with, it was convenient because I could move somewhere else, and there was likely going to be one there for me to be able to transition to. And it wasn't until I moved to Nashville in 2010 that I tried my thought at setting some roots in a certain sense. My style of service I always felt was a little bit more polished, even if I was in more kind of high volume, casual dining places. So it ended up that I ended up at a fine dining restaurant, and they had a pretty substantial list that was much more than what I was familiar with just your stereotypical kind of. I'm not going to name any brand names, but you kind of know the brands that you find on every little kind of restaurant. So I needed to sort of really expand my familiarity. The two sommeliers that were there ended up going on to different ventures, and at a certain point there wasn't anybody thematically running the program, and it happened to coincide right when I started getting nerdy into it, passed a couple of certifications, and then they thought to themselves, well, maybe you kind of know what you're doing. Do you want to kind of do this also, parlayed that into actually doing it formally rather than as a byproduct of just having me on the staff. And then it sort of just exploded from there. I think I was lucky that I was in Nashville at the right place at the right time when the city itself was growing up in a culinary and beverage aspect, and an entire sort of community of sommeliers and beverage professionals in the area were all getting together and getting excited as the town was growing up. And I've had a chance to sort of even see generations, not really generations, but the next wave of those people in Nashville that I've had a chance to speak with and mentor and become good friends with. And now there's a lot of, I mean, back when I started in Nashville, there was maybe a single-digit amount of sommeliers in dining restaurants. And now you can find a good chunk of them that are pretty darn fantastic at most of the good restaurants and places. So it's just a testament to, I think, a town that has grown up in a really, in a short period of time.
Very short period of time, you know. That's amazing that you've been able to see all that. That's so cool.
And then I came to Etch after moving around. I was in the process of taking some different examinations and was at a couple of locations around town that I loved at, but that thematically maybe didn't fit me as well, or that maybe had sort of tighter wine programs, or where the wine programs weren't the main focus, even though I was trying to add something to it and what have you. I had been, actually strangely enough, the first fine dining restaurant that I worked at here was, it's closed now, it was called The Boundary, which actually Deb Paquette, our executive chef, worked at originally. I had heard about her for years, but had never actually kind of met her, and then just the pieces kind of fell to where I got to know one of the previous sommeliers here who works with a distributor in the area. We became good friends, and then at some point he had mentioned that they were looking for a role, and he was sweet enough to put in a good word for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
And ended up actually getting a chance to sort of meet her directly and be part of one of the restaurants in Nashville that has hung its hat on that particular tier of exceptionalism in terms of food. Certainly with what she's done. I mean, she's been a matriarch in Nashville for that purpose for 20-odd plus years. So, and the idea of, I mean, I'm not a young lad anymore, so I think, and my experience in wine isn't as new as it was. I think maybe when you're getting into it, you have this idea that you want to build a program that's going to show you off, and then little by little you learn that you need to maneuver with what guests want. And then in this case, I got a chance to sort of be part of something to where the beverage was intended to be the backseat, to build around something where the food is the primary focus. And that makes it more exciting for me because it creates certain kind of guardrails, but you have to sort of really understand how to maneuver everything to showcase and to elevate, hopefully, what's already there in the food section. So it wasn't really about, certainly I have my little plugs that I like to put in, but with the idea that it has a place.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for everything. You have a question?
Go
ahead.
What would you pair this Portugal wine with in the restaurant?
Ooh. It would round out the venison pretty darn well. There's a couple of directions that I would go with the venison that we have over here, which is normally considered a pretty kind of gamey meat, but the cut that we have here is so tender. It almost doesn't even have any of that, just enough of the spice to really retain it. But I don't think I've had venison anywhere else that was kind of this tender, that you can be a strict steak fillet person and still transition easily into it. But the texture, it will definitely bring out a lot of the more luscious, I think, flavors in the meat itself. Although if you did want to get a little bit more grit, a little bit more spice, we have a Sangiovese blend out of the south of Italy with a bit of Sagrantino in it from Devago that definitely works the spice end of it, dark, kind of smoky. But this is definitely in that category. Or if you just venison. Good old classic fillet, this will be fine as well. But the venison.
What about the verdicchio?
The verdicchio, it's kind of hard to gauge where the chef is going to take our rotating fish special.
Yeah, you'll kind of change your menu a lot too.
She rotates. The main menu stays generally kind of stable, except with transitions over time. But we always have a completely rotating from the seat special that's chef's selected fish, and then the build of it is whatever whim strikes her and strikes the team, and then it becomes fun. And there's a lot of them that this kind of works well with. But the scallop dish that we have as well, which is, scallops can be kind of a gentle protein, but the dish that we build around it has a bit more umph, a bit more spice and bite, and this would definitely kind of play.
Now he's making me hungry.
I know.
I didn't have lunch. Oh, so you had to rub it in now.
Well, we appreciate you so much,
This has
Rob.
been awesome.
Pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wait, how do I say your name?
Guiamaraes.
Your last name? Yeah, that's right.
Guimaraes.
I'm gonna mess it up.
I kind
Yeah, there you go.
of said it.
Where'd you say it? Do it again?
Guiamaraes.
Oh, you did good!
Yeah. Well, it's so nice to meet you.
It was a pleasure.
Yes.
Let's go.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Cheers! Everybody check out Etch.
Cheers.
It's so good.
So good.
Can we just do this for a few more hours?
Yeah.
Just let everybody know that I'm busy.